Yes, I am. I've been wading through the grasses Steve is talking about, and in the bottom of that little river system, they're chest high on me, and so unfortunately no luck in there. I'm pretty confident she's there somewhere in this block, but without a couple of hours to scratch around in there, it's very, very difficult. So I think I'll definitely be back there this afternoon, maybe as the day heats. She'll go for a drink towards Quarry Pan, or maybe she's got a kill in that area. If she's got a kill in that area, come out for a drink at Quarry Pan, and we'll get a direction to walk in afterwards. But we're going to have to wait and see. I think, I'm not sure now. It is definitely one of the more difficult areas to work. So even if you find her on foot, which I think Darby was with me last time I found her on foot there, by the time we got a car in, she'd crossed 2 ravines and we couldn't follow her. But that is the nature of the game when it comes to tracking leopards. I think I'm going to go check the southwest. Make sure Hokomuri or Shidulu haven't come in as well. I mean, we've got a good lead for this afternoon on Shadow and Tlalamba. So I think let's go check somewhere else for a little bit. Maybe clear the mind. She could have also just dropped off Tlalamba there and then headed off hunting. Yes, Carol, almost certainly Tandi's elusive behavior has a lot to do with Shidulu and Hokomuri moving into her territory and her territory shrinking. So almost certainly the reason she's become harder to find and staying in some difficult areas and especially the areas that are not frequented by Hokomuri or Shidulu. So it's almost certainly the reason why she has become more difficult to find, as in trying to keep Tlalamba safe from Hokomuri and from Shidulu, both which pose potential threats. Well, Robert, do you mean the most elusive cat here or the most elusive cat ever? I'd say the most elusive cat I've ever tracked ever in my life is African golden cats in the Central African rainforest. I still didn't see one. We had them on camera trap. I tracked one for about 6 hours the one day and still couldn't find it. But they are very elusive, African golden cats. Out of the individuals, the most elusive cat to track is probably Djuma. He's quite difficult to track on foot, and he also covers big distance. And out of the females, probably Shadow was the most difficult. And again, that was more the nature of the area Shadow spent most of her time in rather than her just being difficult. Shadow's definitely the most aggressive cat on foot, or was the most aggressive cat on foot out of the ones we see regularly here. She's the only one who's charged me while tracking. That was a long time ago though. And it was Brian Joubert's first leopard on foot encounter, and it was a charge. Nasty creature. No, they make a lot of noise and they come very quickly. So this, and they hit the ground as they come towards you. It's very intimidating, but quite exhilarating at the same time. Rebecca says it's like me. Rebecca, if you think I'm that scary, you've definitely never been charged by a leopard. Shame. I'm going to now embarrass Rebecca a little bit. I have tickle fingers, and Rebecca is very ticklish. It is quite funny. You don't even need to touch Rebecca. You just do this, and she starts going no. But yesterday Rebecca gave herself a fright. So Jared found a little Stieglitz blind burrowing snake in the car park. So I was showing everyone the snake. It was just after drive at dinner, and I had it in a box, and it climbed out of the box into my hand. And they're very, very, very pretty snakes. What happened was is that Rebecca is quite scared of snakes, but she's decided now, and she's seen me holding the snake. I'll see if I can find a picture of the snake for you. That it's time that she must touch the snake now, because breaking down barriers and walls and all that type of stuff. And what happened was the snake jumped before she got there, and she got such a fright she had to go hide behind the kitchen door. Shame, she looked so petrified. They are incredibly beautiful snakes. And how's that, Dave? Look at that. So they remind me of sort of a digital matrix. Now that end's actually the head. You can see a little eye there. They've got a very hard beak. And we see them quite often after rain. I think they're absolutely exquisite. They're one of my favorite little snakes. Completely harmless. But yeah, we actually find them quite often around camp and even on drive. And they can get quite big. I mean, they can get the length of my arm, a really big one. Or maybe not the length of my arm, the length of a shorter person's arm. So they eat all sorts of stuff. But they'll eat slugs and stuff like that, but their main food source is termites. And the larval stage of termites is what they eat the most of. Well, no, false alarm out in the distance there. Okay, I'm going to go check the southwest, see if we can find any sign of leopard there. And in the meantime, let's see how Rolf's feathered friends are doing.
Yes, well, everybody, you know how our feathered friends are not so friendly sometimes, because we always frame up on them. We get a lovely sighting with the bird, and as soon as they are just about to come to us, well, they fly away. So we had a couple of hornbills on the road, looked like a monogamous pair, that were just feeding on some insects, and, well, just the couple of seconds before you came to us, they flew off in perfect bird fashion. And for the camera, well, this is wildlife, and it's not staged, it's all live. And what can you do, huh? You've just got to keep doing it, and then you do get lucky sometimes. So now I've done almost a full circle, or a massive zigzag square, and I'm coming down now towards Vuyatela again. And well, it's still lovely to be back in the sandy area of Juma. Now that's one of the things that is totally different here in this part of the Sabi sand. Very granitic base, the rock base being very granite, or a lot of granite, and so a lot of sandy soils, as opposed to in the Masai Mara, which was very clayey soil, so almost totally different in that sense. And what I also noticed almost immediately upon returning, I obviously did when I was out in the Masai Mara as well, there the grass is so rich, and obviously that is assisting in those massive herds of animals that need sustenance there, and a lot of red grass, or the Tomida triandra, and very sweet grass species. Whereas here we've got a lot more sour grasses, and obviously the sour veld being named after that, so a lot less palatable species of grass around here. And that's obviously why we don't have such big numbers of grazing animals. And very simple, once you understand these small little factors, and you understand a little bit of geomorphology, which is how everything intermingles from the rock base to the soil, to the vegetation that grows on it, to obviously the animal that will then frequent those areas because of what's available. So the Masai Mara being one of those very special places, very rich in plants, which is very palatable to the animals, and which then supports that massive amount of species and numbers that move through there. And obviously this region can't sustain as much as that. Now, there's a question coming from YT Viewer asking if do grasses cross-pollinate between the same species? Yes, there can be quite a few of them that do that as well. Now, when we're looking at the grasses here, you can see all these, the coloration that we see on top, that is the flowering parts of a flower. And at the moment, we're seeing quite a lot of flowering on the grasses per se. We're seeing the finger grasses, the red grass. Now, if we look up in front here, that's a good example of it. That's the finger grass that we've got up in front. Very nice colors. We've also got the Natal red top, which is a very similar color to that. Now, both of these not particularly good palatability. They're good for stabilizing the soil, but not massively palatable in any way or form. So we're seeing that dominating quite big areas, which means that it's not a particularly grazable region. So you have then more of your smaller sort of antelope species, like your duiker, small groups of impala, quite a few steenbok. You know, the animals like warthogs that graze, they're not that picky. They will graze on stuff like this. They obviously will choose different grasses that are a little bit better. Now, I just want Senzo just to go off, just to see a little bit of a different plant species, grass species. These grasses that are just next to us here, that's your guinea grass. And they've got quite nice, you see there, and also blowing in the breeze, but much more palatable than the finger grass that we were just looking at before. So there is an indication that we do have some of the sorry, just a comment coming through there from AB saying that the grass seems like it's saying hello. Well, this one does definitely seem a lot more friendly than the finger grass, and it is a lot more friendly. As I said, this is a lot more palatable. Obviously, it's flowering, and now it's going to go into seed, but the animals won't be feeding on that top part of the plant. They're going to be feeding on the leafy part or base at the bottom, which is the nutritious part and what they will be seeking out. And generally, with the more palatable species, they do have quite a good base or leafy base, and there we start to see it there. Now that's the points which the selective grazers and browsers will be going for, but the bulk grazers like zebra or warthog, they'll just be hammering that regardless of the top or the bottom or wherever. But that's the part of the plant that your animals, your herbivorous animals are going to be going for. And like we saw in the Masai Mara, the Tomida triandra or the red grass, that very good leafy base, and they'll be feeding generally just walking through, but here they'd have to be selecting. Now there's a beautiful little blue flower. I have seen that one before, but I'm not quite sure what this one is. I'd have to look that up. Now we've got that. I'll get a couple of screenshots of that, and I'll maybe identify that by this afternoon's drive. Oh, I'm getting straight from FC. It's a Commelina. Now, I should have known that, and apologies, but look how pretty that is with a couple of the little water drops on the leaf in front of it. And that's very pretty. Well, that's a nice little stop there, a little bit on the vegetation, on the grass and all of that. And speaking of nice little beautiful things and water on grass and all sorts, let's head you on over to Steve, who's still got that microscope out.
Yes, so from grass above ground to grass below ground, we're having a nice little peek. A very zoomed in peek, ladies and gentlemen, at very fibrous, adventitious root system of a grass. And it is marvelous how sort of segmented it is. I'm just trying to put a little cover here to prevent the wind from blowing it from the back. But those little roots, to the naked eye, are small little filaments very, very tiny little filaments, and the objective of them is to filter into the ground and to fill all the little nooks and crannies in the soil itself and absorb as much moisture up and obviously nutrients in solution from the ground as possible. And the grasses, as we spoke about before, serve a very important function with regards to stabilizing soil. And they do a very, very good when we have light rainfall or that sort of gentle soaking rain over a period of time, because the grasses with their roots, they don't go very deep. So they're able to only access sort of moisture that's relatively shallow in the landscape. And those of you on Bushwalk with me the other day, we discussed how trees do far better in drought conditions because of their large, long, deep tap roots that are able to dig all the way down to the water table. For example, the marula that we started the show with, how beautiful and deep their roots can go. I wasn't able to find a photo on the internet to show you how amazing the marula's roots are, but roots in general from trees have a much deeper capacity for bringing water up, or ability to get much deeper down. And because what you must imagine is that what you see above ground is mirrored below ground. So the grasses in their sort of half a meter or so, they shouldn't be more than that in depth with regards to roots. But trees that are up to 10, 20 meters above the ground, you can imagine that they're equivalently that deep in the soil when it comes to their root system, and some even more so. Shoplifter, what a marvelous name. Shoplifter, I think you want to know if grass is conscious. If I think grass is conscious, I think all living organisms have a way of dealing with the world around them, and I think they're aware of what's going on. They definitely are aware of competition. They're aware of where the light is coming from. There's definitely processes within them that are reacting to the environment around them. Whether that is the definition of a conscious being or not is probably for another discussion. But there are some sort of videos out there of people that talk to plants and talk to trees, and there definitely seems to be a correlation between trees' reaction to people and how, I don't know, how they manage to produce some form of music. I've seen a little video of that which seemed very, very interesting. How they managed to get that to work is beyond me. But definitely grasses are an important food source, and probably the most important plant on the planet when it comes to our existence. And 70% of the food and cereals grown in the world today are fed to livestock, and the rest we eat. If grasses and plants get too much water, Amanda, it really depends on the soil that they're in. If the soil is very boggy, then the plants will do very, very badly. For example, trees don't do very well in muddy soil. A lot of trees, some species of trees can grow very well in wet, waterlogged soil, but they have got to have some adaptations to that. Grasses, specific types of grasses, do very well in wet, soggy, boggy soil, and one of the reasons is because their root system is as fine as you see it now. It sort of moves through the soil, and if you've ever worked with clay, you know that clay, when it shrinks, when it gets wet, it opens, and when it dries, it shrinks. And now that is detrimental to root systems, and trees in soil that moves and shifts like this is very, very hard for them to survive. That's why we have areas where you will not find trees, and you have areas up in sort of the north of the Kruger, very, very muddy, where fever trees, very, very tall acacia, yellow acacia, do very, very well because their root systems are well adapted to living in that clay soil. So if we get too much moisture here, certain plants may get sort of over indulged in the water, or flooded or drowned, and they might die. Or if the water drops, you might also get die off of trees. We do see a lot of that happening, and certain trees, as I say, have to have adaptations to living in those areas. But because of the soil here where we are, it's very, very sandy up on the top. It's impossible for them to get too much rain. The soil is very filtery. You can actually see the root system if we go back to the microscope quickly, you'll see the soil that is on the root system there is very sandy. I've taken this just from where we are here. It's very sandy soil, large particles, very easily soil. The soil's very porous and moisture just goes straight through like a sieve. There's not too much clay particles up here on the top of the landscape. So that's got a lot to do with where you are. And overwatering plants, yes, if you're in a garden at home, you've got a lot of organic material in the soil, you can overwater. So it's important to understand at what level you need to water. And here we have seasonality. So we have good years, we have bad years. The trees do bad in drought, or they do good in drought. Okay, so it seems as Brent wants to jump in on the soil topic, let's go over to him and see what he knows about Gabbro soil.
I know plenty about Gabbro soil, Stephen. And Steve started off his guiding career at Singita Lubombo, and I was there before him, and I'd already moved on by the time Steve went there. And most of Singita Lubombo is Gabbros. I'm a big fan of the Gabbros when they're not wet. They attract a lot of lovely animals, big herds of zebra, wildebeest, elephants. On the Gabbros, your dominant tree species is knobthorn, so you can get masses of giraffe. I think one of the biggest groups of giraffe I've seen in South Africa, at Singita Lubombo, over 60 on those Gabbros. So, yeah, there is some Gabbro in the Sabi sands. Ooh, Steve says it was basalt, not Gabbro, which is almost the same thing. Basalt and Gabbro are very closely related. But there is some Gabbro in the Sabi sands, the Gabbro rock.
Yes, well, apologies about that, everybody. I don't know what happened, but nevertheless, we have been able to find ourselves a very big hornbill, a southern ground hornbill nonetheless. You wouldn't think so with him being up the tree. And I'm pretty sure it's a male, because you normally look on that very red skin at the base of their chin, and off he goes, and there's normally a little bit of a blue patch on the females, but that one didn't have anything there. And I've come through a little bit of bundu bashing just to come and see what I could find down here. And while we did have some of those yellow-billed hornbills, and they flew off just before you came to us, and now we've had that ground hornbill. At least we managed to get him on camera, and I think that that was the reason why you had to come to us straight like that. Janessa wants to know what is one of the most rarest animals in South Africa. Janessa, I think there's probably quite a few, and it's all dependent on the particular area that you're in. Because some places animals will be locally common. And I say that because, like, for instance, in the Eastern Cape where I live, there's almost no leopard at all. So they're very rare. They've been hunted out by the sheep farmers. And so here in Juma, we do get to see lots of leopard. But there where I'm from, we really struggle to find them. But overall, I must say, let me apply my mind and think about what is the rarest animal. One of them is obviously the African wildcat, becoming quite rare at the moment because they're getting interbred with the common house cat, and it's actually where they originate from. But that is making the African wildcat very rare. The little black-footed cat, which is quite similar to what Brent was talking about a bit earlier. I think he was talking about the little golden cat, but the black-footed cat, very rare. I've only seen one in my life. And then going to the birds, the ground hornbill becoming very rare as well, and I think James was speaking about that yesterday evening, in the sense that their habitat is getting destroyed, and it takes them about 8 years to get to breeding size as well, and then they generally only have one chick. So, they're not breeding very fast, and their habitat is getting destroyed. So there's a number of reasons why they start to become rare. But another one being an arena trogon. That's quite a rare bird. However, where I'm from in the Eastern Cape, we don't have many leopards, but we've got lots of arena trogons. So that's something that we can substitute in that particular area. Now I'm just going back to where I left the little track, because I shouldn't be off-roading here where I'm not following a leopard per se, but the little track sort of petered out here just next to this waterhole, and so I'm just returning to that. But we got very lucky to see that beautiful male southern ground hornbill up in the tree. Now let's see what is here in the water. Doesn't seem to be anything in this little waterhole here. A waterhole like this little one here that we're driving past very often can just start as a little bird bath. But let's just stop here and see. There are probably quite a few little tadpoles and so on in it, but what happens is it's a little bird bath, and it could even be a dust bath that he makes on the road, and he makes a little indentation, and then it rains and there's a little puddle there, and maybe a warthog will come along and do a bit of a wallow and make it a bit bigger, and then after him maybe a buffalo, and then a rhino, and then we start to look at little waterholes like this, which is already making water accessible to a lot of animals in the area. And then we have a little micro ecosystem, and these little water pits or little water holes are generally the whole succession would land up possibly being even in a small little dam. So that's how the succession stages work of little waterholes and little ecosystems, and sometimes coming from the most humblest of beginnings. Anyway, there's not too much happening in this one. We can hear lovely crested barbet calling off to our right. Very interesting, the crested barbet, and how they call. If you can hear it. Continuous. Now they're practicing that circular breathing. There is a little bit of a breeze, and it's calling just a little bit off of us, but very interesting that. And like I said, almost like that circular breathing. They're able to breathe while they're calling. So while he's doing that, he's literally sucking in air while he's blowing out over the syrinx as well. So quite interesting that. There he goes. It's one of the real iconic sounds of the African bush, the crested barbet. Right, let's go off and see if we can find some a little bit late risers, maybe some of the leopard or lions that are still walking around. But while I do that, let's head you off back to Steve, who I'm not sure what he's doing, but he's still in that tent.
Well, talking about risers and not risers, just to clarify what Brent was talking about basalt and Gabbro being related. Indeed, they are related, but the major difference being, if we look at this amazing image that I've managed to get forward, you see the magma chamber, which is deep down in the surface. Now, that is where the rock melts. It becomes molten, and it starts moving towards the surface in the form of a plume. Now, on the left, you can see that red little balloon, which is what we call intrusive igneous rocks, and those are rocks that do exactly what the image shows. They only come up to about here in the surface. Remember, this is the top layer of the earth. They get up to about there, and then they stop and they cool down in a big bubble, and slowly over time they cool down very slowly because it is quite hot still under the ground there. And that is where you find your Gabbro. That's where it stopped. And so the crystals are very, very large in comparison. But the basalt has come up that long chimney tube and has erupted erupted out in the form of either a volcano or some form of fissure in the Earth's crust, and it's actually expelled it onto the Earth's surface. In the case of most basalt, it actually was exploded onto the bottom of the ocean floor, and it went out into sort of pillow-like layers of basalt rock, and it is one of the most dominant forms of rock found in the ocean floor, with the gabbro underneath it. So that is the major difference, and because the basalt erupted from the magma chamber and then landed on sort of the Earth's surface and under the water, you can imagine the temperature variation was enormous, and so the basalt cooled very quickly, and what it led to is much larger much smaller crystals, and we tend to call it fine-grained. And the difference between the two of them is that fine-grained soil or rocks break down or weather very easily versus coarse-grained, for example, granite, very, very hard and very resistant to weathering. So I hope that sums up the ideas and the sort of the confusion there, but they are very similar in their nutrient base, but basalt gives rise to very, very nutrient-rich soil, which is easily weathered down, very muddy sort of stuff. Now, I'm going to jump all the way back to something I tried to show us right in the beginning, and we have got an image here on the screen of a lion's, or could be a leopard, I'm not sure, but we were talking about the hyoid process, the hyoid apparatus, and essentially what we're looking at there is the face of a lion, and on the middle, where I can show you the mouse here, this is where it attaches to sort of the bottom of the jaw, and then it moves down. There's a whole lot of ligaments here and cartilage, and it attaches then to basically the sternum of the animal. And I'm going to show you another picture in the beautiful Smithers book that we have here, so you get an idea of that. Now here is the base, or the top, where it says A there. That is the top, and it goes all the way down. There's this huge cartilage elastic sort of band over here, which is not ossified, and then it goes down, and then it's attached further down on the sternum. And what this sort of flexibility allows for in the movement is when the animal makes the noise, is this almost vibrates. It gives a lot of elasticity. It opens more. It's more of sort of a pump chamber, which allows your Panthera species to make such a loud noise that goes over a very long distance. And to just compare that, the section next door here is for the smaller cats, the caracal and Felis, so the African wildcat, for example, and you can see how it's all ossified. The entire ridge all the way down is ossified, which doesn't give it as much elasticity. And those of you out there who know anything about vibration, the more elasticity you have, the more noise you tend to make. Hence in drums, in guitars, in things like that, the sort of percussion sound comes from the movement and the elastic nature of those organisms. So I hope that explains a little bit about distance in the lion call. And let's go over to Ralph and see if he can explain to us why the ground hornbill makes such a loud noise.
Yes, well, we really are hitting all the hornbills this morning, and here are a couple of red-billed hornbills accessing some elephant dung, and they do love to scratch around in there, as do a lot of the guinea fowl and so on, because they're after the little insects that are coming in there. And there might also be the odd seed and fruit or berry that hasn't been digested by the elephant that they'll feed on as well. So it's a nice little hotspot for these hornbills. See that red-billed hornbill? Their bill is not as big as that of the yellow-billed hornbill, quite a lot smaller. And up in Namibia, there's a very special one there called the Damara hornbill, which is, you would almost say that it is a red-billed hornbill, but slightly different color markings. But he's having a real go in this elephant dung here. There is a couple of them, but the other one has now run down the road and disappeared off. And they're quite adept at walking on the ground as well. They do look rather awkward, but they're quite good at it. Look at how he's using that bill to probe inside all this dung. Dungosaurs, if I could say. Like a connoisseur, he's a dungosaur. They always make me laugh, especially when they run. with their underwear. Now, AB, you want to know, or wondering how old this dung is. AB, it wouldn't be too old. There would be still quite a bit of moisture in there. You can see it's quite dark, so there will be quite a bit of insects and grubs and things that will be in the more wet stuff. But it can be quite a few days old. It's not very fresh, but it is fresh enough for there to be all sorts living in there, and the birds do know that these little hotspots produce quite a bit of food. Now, what's he spotted there? Right, quick scratch above the eye, and they are quite comical. I can sit and watch them almost like I can enjoy watching the baboons, and as they go about their business. If the hornbills allow you to, he's regurgitating something there, I think. Hopping along. And they can be quite vicious as well. I've seen them feeding on little tortoises that have just hatched, and they pick them out of their shell. It's quite sad to see, but they're quite ruthless. So they do feed on snakes and reptiles and anything that they can get their bill on. What's he after? It looks like he's jumping through some couch grass there. Synodon dactylon, or as some of my colleagues would say, Synodon dactylon. I suppose it's all in the pronunciation, but I don't know anybody that speaks Latin, so I'm going with Synodon dactylon. Shoplifter wants to know what's the ugliest bird in the area. Well, in my direct vicinity, it's definitely this guy. Although I suppose it's in the eye of the beholder, and some would say he's absolutely magnificent. But I would say a crested barbet is one of those that you either think he's beautiful or really ugly. The colours are very contrasting, and he looks like a bit of a punk. What else? A grey go-away bird that Senzo reckons is not very good looking. As I say, it's all it's down to what you think. Conrad says, and Conrad's one of our tech guys, he says a marabou stork. I'd have to second that. They definitely are not one of our best looking birds. Now he's just... There's some impala behind us, and it just sounds like they're doing a little bit of rutting between the males. There's quite a big bachelor herd of them. There was the odd female in amongst them, and we've just passed them, but they're rutting, and they make that very a lot of noises like that, and you can often think that maybe they're alarm calling, and even sometimes a bit of a growl coming from a predator or so, but very vocal, the males, the impalas. Okay, all right, everybody, I'm going to head up here just to Vuyatela Dam, see what there is around the water. Maybe we pick up on something. But while I do that, let's head on over to Brent, who's out of his gremlin hole.
Well, yes, we're out, and we're in the west, having a look for Hukumuri or Shidulu. I'm still sort of planning my attack on that area that Tandi's tracks went into for this evening's safari, but I think now, while it's still cool, I think hopefully they'll settle in there and maybe come towards Quarry Pan for a drink in the afternoon. No sign of any other leopards on the property yet. Yet being the operative word, I have not given up. This is always a great spot to look for leopard tracks, especially Hukumuri or Shidulu. They seem to come through this area quite frequently. Let's have a look. I think every time I found Hukumuri's tracks here, we found him within sort of quite quick succession. But alas, no tracks yet, so let's try a little bit further to the west. Lots of hyena tracks everywhere. I've checked the hyena dens in the last little bit. Still no activity on any of our known den sites, which is unfortunate. Be nice to have an active hyena den. Okay, well, we're going to keep checking carefully along here. Hopefully we do find some fresh sign of leopard, or even better, a leopard in the tree. In the meantime, let's send you back to Stivovo.
Let's hope you find a leopard. We are searching hard out there, and I had some requests for looking at some rocks. So I quickly ran to my room, collected a few of my own personal rocks, and then found a few larger or smaller ones in and around the vicinity. So let's quickly go to the microscope and have a look at this beautiful little stone. Now, I am no geologist, but there are all sorts of colors inside this small little stone, and each of those colors you can actually see is individual crystals of different sizes. And so by looking at this rock, you'd be able to say that the crystals are quite coarse-grained, and it is definitely derived from granite. You can see some feldspar, which is the gold flakes. The mica is the gold flakes. The feldspar is often that sort of orangey pink color, and there's definitely some quartz crystals in there, but they are not very big. Bear with me. I'm going to put another one underneath, and there is another one. Look at the quartz crystals in there, beautiful quartz, and there's also some other sort of olivine type of crystals in there. And by looking at the sort of classification or the accumulation of different crystals in here, you'll be able to classify exactly what type of rock this is. And because of the huge amount of crystal or quartz in there, you'd probably guess it's somewhere down the line of some form of granite. But if we go back to just the normal frame, Bex, and I can show people how we've got some really nice crystals here. Here's some crystals. You can clearly see the size of them. It's very difficult to see how beautiful those are. And that's quartz. We say this is quartzite because it's dominated by quartz itself. So quartzite, like granite, is a type of rock. And quartzite, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, was once sandstone. Sandstone that underwent an enormous amount of pressure and heat. Now, obviously, we talk about the white one. The left one is also, it's a form of quartzite. I don't know which one, though. It's almost got like a rose quartz to it. Beautiful in its colors. Trying to look at them under the microscope actually showed them to be quite dirty. It wasn't so nice. And then one of my favorite, this is quite a healing stone. I did not find this here. This is amethyst. It's a very good cleansing stone. It's apparently supposed to keep one sober, to keep your habits quite nice and sort of gentle. I don't know if it's working. Beautiful indeed. Beautiful indeed. Tim, I don't think quartz is an indicator of gold. There are some types of minerals out there that elude me right now that are very good indicators. A geologist friend of mine years ago told me that she used to do samples on termite mounds and look for minerals that were associated with gold, and then she'd just write a report and she'd say that there's gold nearby. So there's certain minerals, it eludes me right now what those minerals are. I can maybe have a Google search just now and have a look, but there's certain minerals, yes, most definitely are associated with gold. I don't know if it's quartz. I'm not sure. But let's do one more beautiful stone underneath the microscope. And here, I just need to focus it. Let me focus. There we go. I might have to just move that up a little bit. I apologize. Joy, quartz is a crystal, a mineral to be more specific. And quartzite is a rock type that is made up of a lot of quartz. I'm sorry I'm taking so long to focus here. Maybe come back to me because this is not working, Bex. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties with my microscope. So quartz, you saw all the little crystals inside these rocks, those little shiny sort of white crystals. Those are quartz crystals. You could essentially call all of these large ones quartz crystals, but when you get an enormous piece of quartz, you call it quartzite because it is made up 100% of quartz crystals, so quartzite. So it's transformed from its original sandstone component through an enormous pressure. You can't even imagine. Continents on top of continents pushing each other, extreme temperature, extreme pressure, and it changes to something completely new. Like, for example, charcoal or coal turns into diamonds. It was one element to another. So quartz is a mineral, quartzite is a rock. Just like quartzite, granite, all of those are rocks, not minerals. But different rock types are made up of different minerals. Feldspar, mica, quartz, olivine, plagioclase. There's many different minerals out there, and if you accumulate them in certain sort of frequencies or certain accumulations, that is the type of rock that they form. And you must imagine that this came from molten rock underneath the Earth's surface, so enormous areas of rock that molten and moved up. So that's why you get those big accumulations of the similar type of crystal in an area that's determined the soil type. YT viewer, I have not heard of any fossils found locally in the Sabi sands. Maybe someone else who's been here longer than me will know, but definitely in the sandstones that we find up in Botswana, there are definitely fossils there of dinosaurs, they believe, and also some archaic fish in certain areas, but that you don't normally find that in rock like this, because this rock was molten and came from the Earth's crust and then came up, stopped underneath the crust, never actually erupted onto the surface. So when you find fossils, it's normally in limestone or in some form of sandstone where there's been deposits of sediment over a period of time, and then they sort of close down on each other, lithify, and then you quite often can find fossils in and amongst those sediments once they weather away to show the underlying section again. Just like I think in areas where there was a lot of charcoal deposits, where entire forests just kind of got sedimented over, and then those have got huge fossil records in them, and also all sorts of minerals and wonderful things that people make lots of money out of. So I hope that helped you with looking at some rocks, but I have shown you that looking at rocks beautiful like this are actually sometimes a little bit more pretty, because if I put those underneath, it looks very dirty, whereas this is gorgeous. So let's go over to Ralph and see if he's managed to find anything pretty further on this morning.
Well, Steve, we have found a few pretty things which we've been delighted to see, especially that ground hornbill. I think is one of the most beautiful ground birds. But at the moment I've just circled around Vuyatila Dam again, and we're just looping back once more. It's been pretty quiet this morning, not too much action, but that's always nice. I don't want too much to happen on my first drive. I want to save some excitement for the drives coming up and let it just slowly build up. But I'm sure that I'm going to be bumping into some leopards and lions, and my favorite being the hyenas, but I'm going to get out on foot as much as I can and try and see what the tracks will tell us. And from the vehicle, not as easy to be able to pick up the tracks and follow them, and so the best will be once I get out on foot. I want to see what's really going on the reserve. Now, the question from Steve about fossils in the Sabi sand area, I don't know of any in this particular region, no. I would say probably closer towards the Drakensberg, but I'd have to think on that one, and but for the minute I can't think of any that have been found in this particular region. And we also think a very granitic base to that, so it's quite a high surface runoff, quite difficult for fossils to actually remain. Now, Janessa, you're wondering what is the animal that is closest to being called a dinosaur? Well, Janessa, I would have to say that probably your leopard tortoise, because they are one of the oldest remaining of the reptiles. a lot of people say crocodiles as well, but that, we had a discussion about this when I was in the Masai Mara, and I believe that crocodiles aren't actually as old as people once believed. So I think the now real truth to it is that leopard tortoise is probably one of the oldest, with it going over tens of millions of years of being alive as a species. So very interesting, yes. But a lot of the girdled lizards and so on, they'll also probably be quite old, but the shield reptiles very old indeed. Crocodilia, yes, they are old, but I think it's they've actually found that it was probably about half as old as they once thought. We've got some red-billed woodhoopers here in front. Let's just stop here and see if we get a nice view. Listen to that. That is a noisy lot, and we locally, the Shangaan people, called them the Hlegabafazi because of exactly what they were doing there, laughing like a bunch of cackling women. And I don't mean that in any derogatory way whatsoever, but put a bunch of girls together and you can often see them resembling something a little bit like the red-billed woodhoopoo. And this is a community or cooperative breeders. Sorry, I'm just taking my foot off the brake. There we go. They are cooperative breeders and all part of the same family. You'll have siblings looking after younger siblings and the dominant male and female, but they're putting all their efforts and energy into assisting the one male and female. And so their genes then are also in the same line, and they then pass through. And those birds, they'll feed on, they're quite a little bit similar to what the woodpeckers do, where they go and they knock off the bark and get into all the little grubs and things below that. But they've all flown off now, so let's move up and see if we can see them again. Otherwise, we'll try and spot something else. Red-billed woodhoopoo, and with one of the many changes with the birding names, they are now the green woodhoopoo. So a lot of the older birders would know them as, there's one just busy feeding there. I don't know if Senzo can see it. Just getting into a stump there. I wonder what he's feeding on. If we can get in a little bit closer there, we might be able to see. There he is. And now that the sun's on it, you can see that lovely red bill. A very fleeting sighting as it was. But anyway, we did very briefly see that lovely red bill. And so I think I'm going to continue on our little loop now. These woodhoopoos have escaped us. So let's head you on over to Brent, who's on quarantine, I believe.
Unfortunately, we seem to be having some gremlins elsewhere, so we had to come down to quarantine. And you can see, hello, wildebeest and impala. There we go, there's a wilde coming out. Now this is, in the next couple of weeks, the wildees become incredibly entertaining as the males try to keep their little groups of females from moving on to the next area. Jason, this is a blue wildebeest, and they're not rare, they're quite common. I've never heard of a Cape wildebeest. There's a black wildebeest, which is a little bit more rare, but not endangered or anything. It just occurs in a more specific area up on the high velds of South Africa. But a blue wildebeest, not rare at all. And they're impala, the most numerous antelope south of the Sahara. we're being stalked at the moment. So I can hear us being approached by a drone. And yes, Carol, it is nice to see so many species living in harmony. Where is it? Dave, can you see it? Stop following us. Who's the camera up? Fergus. Fergus, stop following us. Fergus the voyeur. I can hear it, but I can't see it. Don't crash it now, Fergus. Let's see if we can find the drone. I think it might be just behind us here. Might be a tree in the way. Ah, there it is. There it is. The matrice up in the sky. Oh, watch out, that bird's coming for you, Fergus. No, the smaller drones used to get attacked from time to time by bateliers, hawk eagles, but this one is big enough that they don't tend to attack it. But okay, I think we're going to send you up to see what the drone is looking at.
Well, we will find you soon, Brent. Sorry about that. I had the speaker on while I was listening to Brent talk, and it seems like Brent has spotted us first, and we have yet to find him. But I think he's a bit more to your right-hand side, Ferg. He's hiding from us now as we get the last views of the morning from the drone. Isn't it beautiful to be up in the sky with these beautiful vistas? And indeed, there he goes. There he's moving along. So nice to have an aerial view. You can see how we operate out here with those very open and exposed vehicles. Track him, Vex is chanting in my ear. That is right there above Brent, that road running off. That's where we played cricket just 2 weeks ago. That was the spot. And this is also the area where a lot of us tend to do some of our morning exercises. It's quite nice and open, so it's easy to stretch the legs also. And Brent is trying to play some tomfoolery there. I don't think he realizes how wide the zoom is, in fact, on this drone. How are we there, Ferg? 40. 40 meters, he says. Okay, well, there seems to be some breakup. We'll see if we can keep with him for a little bit longer. But you're back with me in the tent, and Brent, I'm sure, will be home soon for his morning coffee. No doubt there'll be lots of stories told about the morning, and it appears as if Ralph has got someone in picture. Let's see what he's doing.
All right. Everybody, we're still just driving around. Well, I say just, but it's a very important part of a game drive, isn't it? Well, half of the name being drive, so we're just doing that at the moment. Now, there was a question from Lou asking why there are the occasional changes of bird names. Now, there's a couple of different reasons for that, but mostly, you know, we've got a lot of birds around the world, obviously, and with the increase of people traveling and doing bird, there is a lot of conflicting common names. Generally change the Latin name or the scientific name. It generally gets the common name changed because there has been times when you have the same common name for two different completely different birds. Now, there's a couple of birds up there, just up in the tree. They look like starlings. But so the reason has actually come back to you would have, for instance, the red-billed hornbill, and there's a nice raptor flying up there as well. The red-billed hornbill, they changed the red-billed hornbill in Namibia to the Damara hornbill in that specific region of Damara land because it's isolated and it is actually a species on its own. For instance, the East African birds, some of the birds there were very similar named to the ones in South Africa, but being completely different birds completely. So it was, I think it was a South African initiative in one of the most recent bird name changes, just to really distinguish between the East African birds and the South African birds, or the Southern African birds. You know, and as the scientific studies go on, they also find little differences between birds, and so they do then sort of work out different little subspecies and so on, and then that all needs to be added to the new revised edition of books, and reprinted, and then everybody keeps up to speed with the scientific sort of basis of all the different birds. Now, there are some people that do say, well, it's a bit of a money-making scam, but to be honest, if they are doing this scientific research and they're finding different reasons to change the bird names, well, you do want to be up to speed with it. I think the easiest way is to get your online applications on your smartphones, because you can just then update them. So the literature per se is obviously you need to go out and buy it, the hard book copies, but once you buy the applications, and there are some very good ones online for different regions on the world, and then you can literally just update them. So many different reasons for changing the bird names. Now, I'm not too far from my friend Steve, because I can hear something up in the air, and I think I can see the tent off in the distance. Let's head you on over to him and see what he's getting up to.
Taking in the breeze, Ralph. There's a beautiful wind coming. As we have the drone, I'm going to control it with my hands, and I'm going to move it straight up in the sky as it goes and takes in our surroundings. I am a magician, and we have Ferg behind me. Here we have the drone. The drone's going to go up, take in another vista of the African morning as we get ready to close the show for the morning. It has been a marvelous day. I know it's been very quiet out there, but what can you do? This is the time of year when there's been a lot of rainfall. It's a bit late, the rainfall, but because we've had so much rainfall, look how green it is from the sky. It's much easier to see how much grass cover there is. I remember during the TV show in January when the drone went up, you could see the paths, you could see the patchiness of the grass, you could see the exposed soil everywhere. And as we look now, I'm going to run back into the tent while Ferg does his little tour up there. As you look at the ground now, you can quite easily see how much more ground cover there is, how much more protection there is from the sun when the sun, harsh sun, beats down on it. The organic material that's being deposited into the ground as we speak, all the nutrients being recycled from the soil into productive grass, into productive leaves. There with the termite mound, you see the increased nutrients there as the animals graze on those patches. Marvelous to be able to see the difference. And I know Seb would like to do a bit of a time-lapse kind of comparison of the areas during the dry and the wet season, and I think that will be marvelous to see at how the transformation from drought to rainy sort of good conditions can happen. And marvelous we've got the technology to be able to do such things. But it has been a marvelous morning from us in the tent. Fergus playing with his toys he enjoys, and Ralph back in the mix. Welcome back, sir, as well as Davey. Thank you to all of you for joining us this morning. From myself, Steve Folgenbridge, and those in FC, Brent as well as all the cam ops. It's been a marvelous morning. Please feel free to stick around, or should I say come back this afternoon for another live Game Drive Safari. Thank you for the questions and interaction. It's always marvelous to hear from you. I hope you have a beautiful morning further.